This is the Marketing Boss Podcast, where today's top marketing professionals reveal their best tips, tools, and strategies, and we all become better leaders because of it. And here's your host, video marketing expert, Herschel Houghton.
Our unique selling point is that we're just better at scaling events quicker than other people in industries that need kind of changes to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really neat. So it's more in the events and conferences space and how to put those on. So what are some of the more popular ones that you guys have put together? So
I essentially work I head up our Americas office. So I work for for all the events that we run here in North and South America, and then but we are a global company. So I have different counterparts across the world in Johannesburg and London, Australia, Dubai, and so we basically represent our regions. But for my region, the most kind of the three largest events that we run is the World Orphan Drug Congress, which is basically a gathering of the leading pharmaceutical companies, payers, and patient groups who essentially come together to kind of work out how can they collaborate to effectively bring through treatments for rare diseases. And so we're the leading event in that space. So that's kind of one that we're most famous for here. We also run the best algorithmic trading event in Chicago called the Trading Show, and that was effectively we were famous for bringing two different concepts together, which is quant investing and as well as automated trading or high frequency trading, as we called it back in about 6 years ago. So we were the first company to bring those two kind of different angles together, and that's kind of how the market has actually moved. So that's why we were able to kind of defining event in that space. And then we also run a very large home delivery show in Atlanta, which is all about how to get your goods to someone's house from whether that's from a store or a warehouse. So basically bringing together the leading shippers in the Americas.
Wow. So that's super impressive. That's awesome. Let's actually just dive right into the episode. I mean, you're kind of already on a roll there with some of the things that you're sharing. So does that sound good? Let's just go for it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sure.
So because I have so many questions that just came from that. So when you guys are putting on these events, the key thing that you mentioned there is scaling the event. And so I know marketing those events and getting in front of the right audiences, given all the different target audiences that the events represent. Tell me a little bit about your process. Let's say take one of your events, and what's your process there with going after these target audiences and putting on and getting those people to an event?
Sure. So essentially, we operate on a timeline of about 15 months out at least in terms of when we write a business plan. So 15 months out, we write a business plan where we pretty much break down what's our vision of the event, who is in this industry, and we kind of divide them into what we call effectively buyers and sellers. And we break that down by profile, understand what problems and opportunities they have and who would be meeting those. And then we design our vision of kind of, okay, if we brought these people, where are they? Where would we put this event? Where's the best place to serve it? What is the competitive landscape in terms of what are other events? So where do we need to place ours? And then we kind of imagine the scale. So okay, because we're going to have to lock in a venue that's going to be appropriate for the size. So often when we launch events, we might not launch at scale, so we might start off in a hotel, but maybe the next year we will be then looking to go to an expo center, something like that. And we just have to work out the kind of mathematics around that in terms of how much square foot do we need. Then the marketing basically kind of approach to that is obviously, for first thing, as I mentioned there, was the who. And then we need to find out where do they hang out. And then we need to kind of design a marketing plan in sync with that business plan to think, okay, well, how many people do we need for this event? Which type of people? and then also ties into kind of what our product is, because our products can be different. We might have a kind of high level, very senior, maybe smaller conference, which might just be for 200 people, where people are paying quite a high premium to come, so maybe something like $2,500. Or we might have a larger show where we might have delegate revenue as well, but we also are basically attracting people who might come free of charge, and what we call visitors. So as we plan the event 15 months out, we're essentially saying, okay, who are the people that we want? What are we charging them? What's the scope and scale of the event? Before we even kind of then think about, okay, how are we going to get these people?
Gotcha. So give me an example then, as it relates to, an actual strategy, let's say, and the marketing that you use. Like what platforms are working really well for you guys in doing that? I know that there's the other marketing directors and leaders that are listening. I know that they also sometimes are maybe responsible for events. It might be on a much smaller scale than what you guys produce, but essentially, it's probably would be really helpful to know, what media platforms are working really well to target your audiences and to get them to the event.
Sure. Well, what's interesting about the events business as well, which is kind of relevant for anyone who's in marketing, is that really I view each event as its own mini business. And so you can kind of learn lessons from events and kind of tie them back to many other sectors. So one kind of thing that we do need to do, which is quite relevant, I guess, for maybe startups, is that we often launch events. So that's where we come up with a concept, and then we roll it out. And in the same way as a startup, well, no one knows who you are at that point. You have to kind of get traction early on, and how can you get these things off the ground? So in terms of how we would approach a launch event, the first kind of step that we always would do in terms of marketing is basically, once we've identified who we want, we find out how we can get data of those people. Whenever we're going into a new sector, wherever I can kind of capture data quickly and easily, I try and do that as quickly as possible. One thing that has been kind of useful for that is even things like you've got tools like Salesforce, for example. They have a product called data.com, and we have pulled a lot of relevant data from there. That's a useful tool. In the old days, you used to buy directories and just have people inputting data, and that type of stuff is still kind of useful. We do find it's kind of tough sometimes in terms of when you're submitting lists to kind of get the quality that you'd want in today's world. So that is a challenge, but I think in terms of launching an event, many different strategies in terms of building your own data is obviously very useful, because then it's yours, so you can communicate with those people how you want to. Whereas in terms of all the other things that you might do to kind of get the message out, relies on working with other people for their data. So I think the first step is always kind of having your own data. Then other strategies that we would kind of and effectively that would what we do find works very well for us and does for all event organizers is obviously having your own data and then being able to email them or communicate to them or obviously call them up. That's always got to be king. And then in terms of other strategies, then they would kind of feed off of that main core strategy. So I would feel a lot more comfortable, if I know I already have the right data in, let's say I'm moving into a different sector, like the pharmaceutical industry. I just need to know, and I need to feel comfortable that I have the job titles, I have their information.
Absolutely. That's really, really powerful. And I love how you connected the event business and your space to, essentially a lot of the things, relate or are very similar in terms of how we are marketing. So it's really, really interesting. Now you mentioned data as well. And I know, today there's more and more data that's available, and we pretty much live in this data-driven world, and, is there any particular data, that's just an interesting question I thought to ask, like, is there any data that you've come across that has been surprising to you that you didn't expect maybe from maybe a particular group or an effort?
In terms of data, obviously I think a key thing as well is to analyze where bookings are coming from, tracking, and so we've got better at doing that, and then that's enabled us to know which lists have worked, basically, and then kind of having like a central CRM system is good, so that you can kind of like point to what's working and what's not. One point I would also mention is just in terms of kind of market strategies. I went to a growth hacker marketing kind of session in New York here just last week, and I thought they had some really good points in terms of what we find is most powerful is this kind of concept of, I would like to call it, referral-based marketing, particularly when you're operating in very specific industries. So let's say you're operating in the orphan drugs industry. Well, there is only a finite amount of people in that industry. It might be a lot of people, but they're all very connected into each other. And so the most powerful kind of marketing lesson, I think, is to essentially use the people that you've developed a good connection with as much as possible. And you can see that in terms of other strategies that other companies have used that have started from the likes of Uber to Airbnb, where they have incentivized the people that are having a good experience with their product to then refer on other people. And so that's really kind of what we are, I'd guess, specialists in, is using the networks within which we operate to get to other people's networks, to leverage it, to not view an individual as just an individual, but view an individual as somebody with their own network, and as they hook us into that network, multiple networks that. Working for us.
Right. I remember hearing from someone that, whoever it is that you're looking to meet or get in front of is usually just one connection away, and
exactly,
when you meet somebody, it's not just that person, but, they have a phone filled with, or let's say a LinkedIn connection profile that's filled with people that they would probably be more than happy to introduce you to. So I found that that's also been really powerful as it relates to how we're able to, drive more business and build more relationships. So I completely agree with that. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, and I think that also comes back to, you need to have your product needs to fit the market, and your product needs to be strong. And often being pushed a product that you don't want is no good. So it always does come back to the product. But I think there is kind of more opportunities for us to use the networks of people to stress test the product. And the interesting thing about events is that really, instead of, let's say, selling something that's static, like a pen or something like that, an event is actually it's a different thing, because it's almost something that's constantly moving, because the more people we get, the more valuable the event actually comes, or the more right people that we get. So it's a very fluid thing, and people that are sponsoring or attending are often buying into a concept and a vision, and we essentially need to prove to them or make them feel comfortable that vision is going to become a reality. So that's also kind of an interesting kind of concept, because the more people that get bought into that vision, essentially the more valuable the product becomes in of itself. And once those kind of factors kind of really start to play out, that's when you really make it in the events business, because it almost spirals away in terms of making returns, because the marketing almost does itself once it becomes the industry defining event.
Absolutely. Now, another question that comes to mind is specifically how are you, when the users and the, the audience is showing up to the event, or maybe they're engaging online, how are you essentially guiding them to, help to bring in more, or in other words, to share the word? Is there anything in particular that you're doing or suggesting or guiding them along your process to do with that?
Well, I think that's actually one of our key opportunities that we're looking into now. So there are different platforms you can use, different service providers to actually kind of create that referral thing. But I think it needs to go back to, why would somebody want to refer you, or why would someone give you their network? And the interesting thing about, I've been working in this industry for 10 years, and what's always kind of amazed me is that the power of good faith of people in terms of them using their networks. They're often willing to help you, and really you just need to basically see, is it in their interests? And often, let's say I'm in the algorithmic trading industry, well, the people within that industry, they are passionate about it because it's their life, and so they are very willing to give referrals to expand their networks, mainly because if they're giving up their time to be part of something, they want it to be successful. And so it's really kind of aligning. I think sometimes as business owners, we don't think about our customers or the people that we are looking for our own benefit. We're not seeing their perspective enough. And so that's kind of the constant thing I'm always challenging our employees is, okay, well, what is their perspective? How are we helping that person? And I think the more that you help people, the more that they help you. And that's essentially how we can get to large-scale events that are very successful, is being helped and by helping others. And so we need to continually prove how we can help them, whether that's by, if they give us some data, or if they give us some referrals, or they help us craft the content, then what can we do for them? Who can we introduce them to that can transform their business? What can we do in terms of our platforms to help promote their cause? It's kind of I think that kind of give and take is especially important to today's world.
Absolutely. And I think it really points back to, the authenticity of what's happening in those moments with our clients. And I think it also kind of mirrors what's happening now with entertainment and the way that we're, spending our time watching TV and what we choose to watch. A lot of it now is, of course, and it's everywhere now. It's just more this reality TV kind of concept, and it's going beyond just something that's scripted, but something that's real and it's happening right in front of them. And so I think that by essentially removing that veil, if you will, and just having real relationships with people, that's what's really, really key. And one of the ways, too, that I've seen some companies engage in building that relationship online or via, the internet and things like that is actually by providing really great content. And so, of course, they might do that through a blog post, or right now, video in terms of a form of content is becoming even more popular. Have you guys been utilizing that as a platform, and has that been something that, or, if video is it, tell us a little bit about that. If not, what has really been working, as it relates to building the relationship in a way that's somewhat indirect with content.
Well, I think content's very interesting. Obviously, I've been to sessions that said content is king, and kind of people have got very excited about the content that they're going to be producing, and there's definitely a lot of power in great content. And so, if you can produce great content, then that's fantastic. But there's also a big detriment if you just put out content for content's sake and it's not powerful. It's not something that is really genuinely good enough that someone would want to share that, or someone would actually really want to read, and it's useful. And kind of what I like to think about content as well is that, the interesting thing about, how many taxis does Uber own? How many houses or apartments does Airbnb own? And actually, the answer is clearly that they don't own any. They're a platform. And so really, for a lot of businesses, I think what the opportunity with content is not to necessarily kind of kill yourself to produce content yourself, but to utilize the platform and the networks that you have to enable people that can produce great content and are willing to do that and want to and have a vested interest in getting out there, to utilize them. It's kind of flipping the concept on its head, because I think a lot of times companies think, we just need to create great content, and maybe the content that would be really powerful, they actually have access to, and they just need to think in terms of a more clever way about how to give the people that could create that great content in their networks to come to them and then to use that.
I love that. That's super interesting. And I just heard of a similar idea or concept or nugget, if you will, from a good friend of mine, and he was basically saying that, instead of feeling the pressure to, release or publish something, let's say every week or whatever the case is, that he decided that he was just going to focus in on really, really quality content, and focus on that and pushing that, because that's going to, essentially that's what's going to drive more people to you and really engage them on a deeper level, because it's, time was well spent in terms of putting something together with the focus of the quality of it as opposed to the quantity.
Exactly. And I think with content as well, I think it kind of became, I think at one point there was almost an overwhelming amount of top 10 lists and things like this just all the time. And that's because, they were getting kind of good responses in the early days. But the issue is that if we continually dumb down content and try and just too digestible, let's say, rather than actually putting out stuff there, putting out stuff into the market that is genuinely useful and interesting and has depth, then that's going to be no good. I think you're seeing a trend now towards that, exactly that, people focusing on great content, in depth, and that's what people will look for, and that's what you need to meet people's needs. It always goes back to that. Are we actually meeting a need? And a top 10 list or something like that, maybe there is a need for a list. Maybe it's very hard to find who the top 10 patient groups are in America. If that's the case, then you should definitely produce that piece of content. But it always comes back to, is there a need? And actually, in today's world, when you have so much information, there is a lot of need to organize, to make things clearer, to make it, if somebody's trying to enter a new area, to make it just straightforward, because a lot of issues from personal life to professional life are very complex, and sometimes in terms of trying to find that information, there isn't enough maybe clear instructions on how to do that, and that's where many different companies can bridge that gap. And I've seen it with other companies like Home Depot, to other people who build communities to help basically meet needs. So quite like how Home Depot, they have like a community where you can go in and you can ask a question, and then one of their reps can basically answer that question. Mm-hmm. And that is basically, one, filling a need, because a customer has an issue. How do I, if I have a problem with a wall, how do I fix that? And secondly, it's basically great branding for them, because their expert is proving it. And of course, it ties back into their sales. It's not just for fun, this community, because they can then say, well, what you need is, these nails, and you can get it at a discount if you order it online here. So it's a very powerful kind of tool.
Absolutely. Now, Martin, your advice and everything you've been sharing today has been so helpful. We'll just kind of wrap it up here, with a couple last questions and go about our day. So, sure. One question especially is, in your space, in your position, what has been your biggest challenge, and how have you guys been addressing that?
biggest challenge. I think probably I've think maybe the biggest challenge has been, I would say, fighting to get through the noise. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier. We have all this information, all these people clamoring for people's attention. And so our challenge and also our opportunity is always to find the edge, to really meet someone's need and to make sure that we cut through the noise so that somebody can actually hear us.
Absolutely.
And when they do hear something useful for them.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was basically it. That was the challenge.
Gotcha.
The challenge / opportunity.
Awesome. Which I know it's a common issue with a number of us in marketing. It's like, how do we break through all of the noise? And I definitely feel you with that. One of the things that we've tried to focus on ourselves now are getting to the point with our content and with how we present ourselves is really getting better about telling our story and the stories of the people that we work with. Because that's really, I think, what differentiates, one person from the next. So we hope to do a lot better with that ourselves in terms of taking on that challenge. That's a great point. I think, the other aspect is like we need to always think about how do people digest information. Mm-hmm. And look, how did did Jesus just leave a load of instructions on how to behave? Well, no. What he did is in the Bible, it's just a collection of stories essentially, and that is how humans are. That's how we digest information. That's why those teachings are like it is through story form. And in terms of kind of basis, we always need to remember, how do people digest information? And yes, if you have powerful, compelling stories, that they can always resonate with whoever you're trying to target. Absolutely. And I love that too. That is true. That is true about the the Bible and how that's laid out. I mean, it's full of stories. And then from those stories we draw and connect and learn about, like you said, how to do things, how to go about life.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up here, I always love asking this question as well, which is, what do you see in the future for marketing? So 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe, how do you see marketing? I know that the essentials are still going to be in there. We're looking to attract, break through the noise, and bring people to a desired action. What do you see might be different in the future than it is today?
Well, I think even if you think about today, I think marketing has changed so much. Mm-hmm. Like going back to the concept of growth hacker marketing, which is just kind of in vogue at the moment. You have seen a shift from almost the concept of, I would call it the movie marketing kind of business, where you get a lot of money and you make a big splash through a number of different mediums, and you're not necessarily sure which mediums are actually giving you ROI, billboards and things like that. And so in terms of what I see changing is that people are going to be a lot more focused on metrics and things of that nature, and using technology, and really kind of that idea of referral-based marketing is going to take a lot more prevalence. And what's that going to mean for marketing? Well, it's probably going to mean that the marketing role is going to change. It's going to be more like you're going to have, like if you think about a lot of those kind of startups, they have growth hacker marketers or technology experts, and that kind of fusion of technology and marketing is going to become more and more important. So the role is shifting. It's definitely kind of that tracking, that analysis is going to be more important. And you're probably going to see kind of like different types of people in marketing as well. And that's a shift that's already happened, but we're probably going to see more of it. And I'm not saying that mediums like billboards are not useful. They are. But this kind of analysis and treating marketing in a different way, rather than kind of like a guessing game, it's going to be a lot more kind of prescriptive, and you're really going to understand marketing a lot better, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a really, I love that. I mean, that's so true. The more data that's out there, it won't be as, test go, and playing around. It'll be a whole lot more focused and more personalized. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Martin, thanks again for being on the show today. This has been really, really, really great. And where can people reach you guys, or reach you in particular if they have, further questions, or they want to connect with you?
So if people want to shoot me an email at martin.kelly@terrapinn.com, Terrapins with 2 R's and 2 N's, feel free. Or I'm a big user of LinkedIn as well. So you can find me, if you just type in Martin Kelly Terrapinn, you can feel free to add me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on today, Martin. This is a great way to spend the Friday,
Exactly.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for listening to the Marketing Boss Podcast with your host, video marketing expert, Herschel Houghton. We'll catch you next time.